In the year 20XX, whenever the hell that is, everywhere is a slum. Not exactly what you would call the greatest of track sequences for any game, but then, this is not exactly a great game. This is of course Mutation Nation by SNK on the Neo Geo. A 1 or 2 player beat 'em up that is not a one-on-one fighter. A very rare thing indeed for the Neo Geo. The game plays close to the usual beat 'em up mould, allowing the player to utilise various combos, jumping attacks, throws and special moves to utilise on the opposition. Rather than the standard fare of allowing players to pick up objects to use as weapons against the enemy, however, Mutation Nation instead uses a system where the player can pick up one of 4 elemental spheres that allow the player the ability to unleash screen-filling super attacks. There are also neutral spheres that will give life back to the player and increase the number of super attacks that they can use. Mutation Nation was a game that borders on good and bad. It didn't really offer anything new or improved when comparing it against other beat-em-ups of this type at the time. But at the same time, it wasn't as bad as, say, Double Dragon in the arcade or Rival Turf on the SNES. It was in fact a bang average game. But the reason I have decided to make a video about it is not to slate it, not to try and convince you that it is a good game when it isn't, but for me, it holds a lot of good memories. You see, this was the very first Neo Geo game I ever owned. I had played other Neo Geo games before in the MVS cabinets, such as NAM 1975 and Magician Lord. But when I got my Neo Geo back in September 1994, Mutation Nation was the game I got with it. I'm not sure how much the game actually cost me, as the console and the game cost me about £200 all in. A real bargain at the time, as Neo Geo games used to cost about £200 by themselves. Now, it should also be noted that the Neo Geo did have its fair share of duff games, especially in those early days. The era of NAM 1975, Baseball Stars and Magician Lord is what I refer to as the first wave of Neo Geo games. Games that cost a fortune and didn't provide real value for money. And this, in my opinion, is why magazines scored the games very low. But by the time Mutation Nation came out, the Neo Geo was already in its 3rd or 4th wave at that point, and the games had come down in price to about £150. Still pricey, but a little better. Anyway, with this being the only Neo Geo game I had at the time, of course I was going to play it. And while the game was nothing great, it did feel pretty sweet being able to play an exact port of an arcade game at home. And this is something I had been craving at home for years. That all-important arcade experience. Let's start with the visuals. And as you would come to expect from a Neo Geo, they're pretty decent all round. The main sprites are reasonably large and well detailed and smoothly animated as well. The walks look a little more like a funky swagger, but it's not choppy or jittery or anything like that. The animations on the attacks look great and really fluid. The enemy sprites are good in most places and really excellent in others. These guys with what looks like an American football helmet on, but with a face full of tentacles, look excellent. And the mid-bosses are large, well drawn, and suitably animated, especially when they explode into this green gloop of a mess. End of level bosses look huge, again with lots of detail and well drawn, but some like this guy, the end of level 3, look a little rubbish and odd, especially that walk. Well, I say a walk, it's more like a shuffle. The backgrounds look great in this game, with some enemies approaching from the background, showing off the sprite scaling capability of the Neo Geo to great effect. In this part level with the trees and the illuminated cityscape shining through the branches, looking very metropolitan indeed. My favourite thing about Mutation Nation has to be the sound. When I talk about the arcade experience, the sound is always what makes it for me. A lot of people are drawn into games with great graphics, but I had always preferred games with excellent sound over graphics. I think this comes from the fact that in my early video game days, I had to play games with poor sound on the Commodore 64, and in some cases, no sounds at all. And this left a void in the atmosphere. But the Neo Geo has 15 channels of sound, and so there are thuds, explosions, bangs, wallops, smacks, speech, and music all at the same time. It's a real cacophony of noise for sure, but it also sounds like a lot is going on. Mutation Nation has some real catchy tunes to it, but all those heavy sounding hits as you beat the enemy up, and the massive bang noise when you hit the deck, it's what arcade sounds are all about, and at the time in the home, the SNES and the Mega Drive are just not capable of producing this amount of noise. I always had my Neo Geo hooked up to a set of powered speakers, and boy, did this sound loud and bassy. It was just freaking awesome. The gameplay in Mutation Nation is nothing special. In fact, it wasn't even as good as Streets of Rage on the Mega Drive. But it was still a fun game to play, and when I got my Neo Geo, my mate and I would play this game more than any other game I had on any console at the time, just because it was like playing an arcade at home. Neo Geo games are often slated for being easy, but Mutation Nation was not exactly easy. You only get 3 continues, which was a feature in most AES games, and with only 1 life per credit, it would take a fair amount of playtime to beat the game, but unfortunately, Mutation Nation did not get enough playtime, as it probably should have got at my home. As 2 weeks later, I had the game that made me want a Neo Geo in the first place. Samurai Showdown. But that's a video for another time. Mutation Nation is not the best game around, nor is it the worst. It is just an average beat 'em up that got lost in the crowd. But it is worth a credit or two if you haven't played it before. But for me, it will always be that game that marked my arrival into Neo Geo ownership, and thus will always be remembered fondly for that reason alone. And that's all from me, folks. If you like this video, or indeed my channel, then please don't forget to give me a sub and a thumbs up. And a big thank you to all those that have subscribed already. It means a lot. Thanks for watching.